The cellar door wouldn't close. Era pressed her shoulder against the warped wood, bare feet slipping on the frozen kitchen floor. Dawn light crept through the gaps in the shutters, turning the frost on the windows into fractured silver. Her breath came in visible clouds that hung in the air like accusations. "Mama." Her daughter's voice drifted up from below, thin and worried. "Mama, they're cold." "I know, sweetheart. I know." Era shoved harder, her muscles screaming. The door had swollen with moisture from the snow that had blown in through the broken foundation. She'd meant to fix it weeks ago, before the first real freeze, but there had been the leak in the roof to patch and firewood to gather, and the endless grinding work of keeping them both alive on the edge of packed territory, where no one looked too closely at a widow and her child. The door finally caught with a groan that seemed too loud in the pre-dawn silence. Era threw the bolt and stood there, palms pressed flat against the rough wood, trying to steady her breathing. Her heart hammered against her ribs like something trying to escape. This was bad. This was so much worse than bad. She'd woken an hour ago to find Lena's bed empty, the quilts thrown back and the window cracked open just enough for a small body to slip through. Panic had sent her stumbling through the cottage in her nightdress, calling her daughter's name in a desperate whisper, because even in crisis, old habits held. Don't draw attention, don't make noise, don't let them notice you exist. She'd found Lena in the cellar with 3 rogue pups, huddled in the corner where Era stored the winter potatoes. 3 rogue pups. Children, really. The oldest couldn't have been more than 10. A girl with matted dark hair and hollow eyes. The 2 younger ones, boys, had pressed against her sides like they were trying to disappear into her skin. All 3 had stared at Ira with the blank wariness of animals who'd learned that adults meant pain. "I found them in the woods," Lena had whispered, her small hands clutching at Era's nightdress. "They were sleeping in a snow cave and they didn't have any food, and Mama, I couldn't just leave them there. I couldn't." Era had looked at her daughter, 7 years old with her father's pale blue eyes and Era's own white blonde hair, and felt her heart crack open. Because of course, Lena couldn't leave them. Of course she'd risked the dark forest and the freezing cold to lead 3 starving rogues back to their cottage. She was kind, despite everything. Kind in a way that would get her killed. "You did the right thing," Era had said, even though it was a lie. Even though kindness was a luxury they couldn't afford. Now she stood in her kitchen as the sun rose and tried to think past the terror that threatened to choke her. Rogues were killed on sight in the Northern Territories. Everyone knew that. The law had stood for 3 generations, ever since the Wars of Succession had torn the packs apart and left the land soaked in blood. Rogues were wolves without pack bonds, without the structure that kept the beast controlled. They were dangerous. Unstable, a threat to the carefully maintained peace. The penalty for harboring rogues was death. Era's hands shook as she moved to the stove and began building up the fire. The cottage was already cold enough that ice had formed on the inside of the windows. She fed kindling into the firebox with numb fingers, watching the flames catch and spread. Heat. They needed heat. The pups needed heat or they'd die anyway, and then Lena would have risked everything for nothing. The water in the kettle had frozen overnight. Era cracked the ice with the handle of a wooden spoon and set the kettle on the stove to melt. Porridge. She'd make porridge. It would stretch further than bread, and she could thin it with extra water if she needed to. She was measuring out oats when she heard it. Wolves. The sound started low, a chorus of howls that rose and fell like wind through the pines. But this wasn't wind. This was voices, dozens of them, calling to each other in the gray dawn. Close. Too close. Era's hands stilled on the oat jar. The howls were coming from the north and east, from the direction of the pack center, where the Alpha King kept his seat in the great lodge that had stood for 200 years. They were surrounded. The oats scattered across the floor as Era ran for the cellar door. Her fingers fumbled with the bolt, slipping on metal slick with condensation. She wrenched it open and nearly fell down the steep stairs in her haste. Lena, Lena, come here right now. Her daughter looked up from where she'd been tucking Era's spare cloak around the three rogue children. In the dim light from the single high window, Lena's face was pale and smudged with dirt. Mama? Come here, baby, come to Mama right now. Lena scrambled up the stairs. Era caught her and pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, wood smoke and child sweat, and the faint wild smell that meant her wolf was close to the surface. Too young to shift yet, but soon. Another year, maybe two. If they lived that long. Listen to me. Era gripped Lena's shoulders, forcing herself to meet her daughter's eyes. There are wolves coming, pack wolves. They're going to find the pups. No. Lena's voice broke on the word. No, Mama, we can hide them. We can't. Era smoothed her daughter's hair back from her face, the gesture automatic after 7 years of motherhood. Baby, we can't hide them. The wolves will smell them. They'll know. Then what do we do? Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks, hot and fast. Mama, what do we do? Era didn't have an answer. She pulled Lena against her chest and held on tight, staring at the three small shapes huddled in the corner of her cellar. The oldest girl had wrapped her arms around the two boys, her body curved over theirs like a shield, protecting them even now, even when there was nothing she could do. The howls were getting closer. Era made a decision. Stay here, she told Lena. Stay in the cellar with them. Don't come up no matter what you hear. Do you understand me? Mama, do you understand? Lena nodded, her face crumpling. Era kissed her forehead once, hard, and then climbed the stairs and bolted the cellar door behind her. The kitchen was bright with morning sun now, light streaming through the gaps in the shutters and painting golden stripes across the worn floorboards. Era's nightdress was thin enough to see through where the light hit it. She grabbed her shawl from the hook by the door and wrapped it around her shoulders, then stood in the center of her kitchen and waited. She didn't have to wait long. The knock, when it came, was hard enough to rattle the door in its frame. 3 sharp strikes that echoed through the cottage like gunshots. Era crossed the room on legs that felt like water. Her hand on the door latch was steady. That surprised her. She'd thought she'd be shaking, but instead, she felt almost calm. The kind of calm that came after panic had burned itself out, leaving nothing but cold clarity behind. She opened the door. There were wolves everywhere. Dozens of them, gray and white and black against the snow, their breath steaming in the cold air. They filled her small yard and spilled out into the forest beyond, a living wall of fur and muscle and teeth. Most were in wolf form, but a handful had remained human. They stood in a loose semicircle around her door, naked despite the cold, their skin marked with the blue-black tattoos that identified them as the Alpha King's personal guard. And in the center of them all stood the Alpha King himself. Era had never seen him up close before. She'd glimpsed him from a distance during the seasonal gatherings, a tall figure in dark furs surrounded by guards, but she'd never been close enough to see his face. She'd never wanted to be. The powerful didn't notice people like her unless they wanted something, and what they wanted was never good. He was younger than she'd expected, somewhere in his early 30s, with the kind of face that would have been handsome if it weren't so hard. Sharp cheekbones and a strong jaw, pale blonde hair pulled back from his face, and eyes the color of winter ice. He wore black furs over a shirt and trousers, both well-made but practical. No crown. No obvious symbols of rank beyond the way every wolf in the yard oriented toward him like flowers following the sun. He looked at Ira, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. "You're Era Thorne's daughter." His voice was deep, with the kind of resonance that said he was used to being obeyed. Not a question, a statement. Yes, Alpha King. Era kept her eyes down, her posture submissive. Every instinct screamed at her to bare her throat, to show belly, to do anything that might appease the predator on her doorstep. My scouts reported rogue scent on the wind. The trail led here. He paused, and Ira could feel him studying her. To your home. I don't know anything about rogues, Alpha King. The lie tasted like ash on her tongue. No? Something in his voice made her look up despite herself. His expression hadn't changed, but there was something in his eyes that might have been curiosity. My scouts are very good at their job, Ira Thorne's daughter. They don't make mistakes. Then perhaps the rogues passed through my property. Ira's hands twisted in her shawl, crushing the fabric. I wouldn't have seen them. I was asleep. The trail doesn't pass through. It ends here. He took a step forward, and Ira fought the urge to retreat. At your door. Behind him, the wolves were watching. Ira could feel their eyes on her, dozens of predators waiting to see what their alpha would do, waiting to see if she would run, so they could chase. I live alone with my daughter, Ira said. Her voice was steadier than she'd expected. We keep to ourselves. We don't make trouble. Where is your daughter? The question hit like a fist to the stomach. Ira's breath caught, and she saw something flicker in the Alpha King's eyes. Recognition, maybe. He'd noticed her reaction. Sleeping, Ira managed. She's sleeping. Wake her. Alpha King, please. Wake her, or I'll send my guards in to do it for you. Ira's mind raced. If she refused, he'd force his way in. He'd find the cellar door and the pups hiding below, and then it would be over. All of it. But if she woke Lena, if she brought her daughter up here where the Alpha King could see her, question her. Lena was 7 years old and honest to a fault. She'd never learned to lie convincingly. She'd tell the truth, and the truth would kill them both. I'll get her, Ira said. She turned back into the cottage, and the Alpha King followed her. Ira's hands clenched into fists, but she didn't protest. This was his right as Alpha, his territory, his rules, his authority to go wherever he pleased. She was nothing, a widow living on the edge of packlands, so far from the center that she'd gone years without speaking to another pack member. She had no rights he was bound to respect. The cottage looked smaller with him in it. He seemed to fill the space, his presence overwhelming in the tiny kitchen with its scarred table and mismatched chairs. His gaze swept the room, taking in the scattered oats on the floor, the melting kettle on the stove, the frost on the windows. Missing nothing. You live here? He asked. Just you and your daughter? Yes, Alpha King. No mate? My mate died 4 years ago. The words came automatically. She'd said them so many times they'd lost all meaning. In the border skirmishes with the Eastern Pack. I remember. The Alpha King moved to the window and looked out at the forest beyond. Thorns was a good fighter. His death was a loss. Ira said nothing. Thorns had been a good fighter. He'd also been a drunk and a bully who'd left bruises where no one could see them, and taught Ira that safety was something other people had. His death had been the best thing that ever happened to her, but she'd learned long ago not to say such things out loud. The Alpha King turned from the window. Your daughter. Get her now. There was no more room for delay. Ira crossed to the cellar door, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Her hand hovered over the bolt for a moment. Then she made her choice. She walked past the cellar door to the narrow stairs that led to the loft where she and Lena slept. Lena, she called up the stairs. Come down, sweetheart. We have a visitor. Silence. Good. Lena was smart enough to stay hidden, but that only bought them seconds, maybe a minute at most. The Alpha King would notice. He'd ask questions. Your daughter isn't up there. Ira froze with one foot on the bottom step. She turned slowly to find the Alpha King watching her with those ice-pale eyes. She must be hiding, Ira said. She's shy around strangers. I can smell her. He tilted his head slightly, nostrils flaring. Her scent is strongest near that door. He pointed at the cellar. Ira's blood turned to ice in her veins. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. There was nothing left to say. No more lies that would hold. He knew. He knew. And now, it was over. The Alpha King crossed the kitchen in 3 long strides. Era moved without thinking, putting herself between him and the cellar door. It was stupid, suicidal. He could break her in half without effort, and they both knew it. But she couldn't just stand there and watch him open that door. She couldn't. He stopped a foot away from her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body, smell the scent of pine and cold wind that clung to his furs. "Move," he said quietly. "Please." The words scraped out of her throat. "Please, Alpha King. She's just a child. She didn't understand. Move, or I'll move you." Era didn't move. She spread her arms, making herself as wide as possible, a barrier between the Alpha King and the cellar door. It was pathetic, laughable. But it was all she had. For a long moment they stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Then, the Alpha King's hand shot out, lightning fast, and closed around her wrist. He pulled her aside as easily as moving a curtain, and Ira stumbled, her shoulder hitting the wall hard enough to bruise. He threw the bolt and opened the cellar door. The stairs descended into darkness. Era could hear her own breathing, harsh and ragged, and under it the faint sound of a child crying. Lena. That was Lena crying, and there was nothing Era could do to stop what was about to happen. The Alpha King started down the stairs. Era lunged after him, grabbing at his arm. "Please don't hurt them. Please, they're just children." He shook her off, without looking back. His boots were heavy on the wooden steps, each footfall like a death knell. Era followed, her bare feet silent, her heart breaking with every breath. The cellar was dark, except for the thin gray light from the high window. It took Era's eyes a moment to adjust. When they did, she saw Lena standing in front of the 3 rogue pups, her arms spread wide, just like Era's had been, protecting them, trying to be a shield with her small body. "Don't hurt them," Lena said. Her voice shook, but she didn't move. "Please don't hurt them. They didn't do anything wrong." The Alpha King stood at the bottom of the stairs, utterly still. He looked at Lena, at the 3 rogue. The Alpha King stood motionless at the bottom of the cellar stairs, his massive frame blocking most of the weak dawn light. Era watched him from 3 steps up, her fingernails digging crescents into her palms. She couldn't see his expression from this angle, only the rigid line of his shoulders and the way his hands had curled into fists at his sides. Lena hadn't moved, 7 years old and barely tall enough to reach Era's chest, standing between a predator and his prey, like she had any chance of stopping what came next. The 3 rogue pups huddled behind her, silent now. Even the crying had stopped. They knew what wolves did to rogues. They'd probably seen it before. "Step aside, child." The Alpha King's voice was soft in a way that made Era's skin crawl. Soft like snow falling before an avalanche. "No." Lena's chin came up. "They're my friends. I won't let you hurt them." "Lena?" Era started down the stairs, but the Alpha King's hand came up in a sharp gesture that stopped her cold. His attention never left Lena. "Your friends," he repeated. "How long have they been here?" Lena's jaw worked. Era could see her daughter wrestling with the truth, trying to decide if a lie would save them. But Lena had never been good at lying, and the Alpha King would smell deception the moment it left her mouth. "Since last night," Lena whispered. "I found them in the woods when I went to check the snares. They were so cold, and they didn't have any food. And the little one was coughing so hard I thought he'd die. I couldn't just leave them there." "So you brought them here, to your home. Did you tell your mother?" "Not until this morning." Tears tracked down Lena's cheeks, but her voice stayed steady. She was asleep. "I didn't want to wake her, because she's always so tired and she works so hard, and I thought maybe I could just give them some food and let them get warm, and then they could leave before anyone noticed." The Alpha King was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved, taking one step closer to Lena. She flinched but held her ground, and Era saw something flicker across his face too quickly to name. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena Thorne's daughter." Lena Thorne's daughter. He crouched down, bringing himself closer to her eye level. He was still enormous compared to her small frame, but the gesture shifted something in the air between them. "Do you know what rogues are?" "They're wolves without packs." "Do you know why they don't have packs?" Lena's hands twisted in her nightdress. "Because they did something bad, or because their pack died, or because they ran away." "And do you know what the law says about rogues in the Northern Territories?" Lena's face crumpled. Fresh tears spilled over, and her voice broke on the words. "They have to die, but that's not fair. They're just kids. They didn't hurt anybody. The law doesn't care about fair." The Alpha King's voice had gone even softer. "The law cares about keeping the pack safe. Rogues are dangerous, unstable. They can't control their wolves without a pack bond to anchor them. These ones aren't dangerous." Lena scrubbed at her face with both hands. "They're scared. They've been running for weeks and people keep chasing them, and they just want somewhere safe to sleep. That's not dangerous. That's just sad." Era's throat closed. She wanted to go to her daughter, to pull her away from the Alpha King and the rogue Pups and this whole impossible situation. But moving now would draw his attention back to her. And as long as he was focused on Lena, there was still a chance. For what, she didn't know. But a chance. The Alpha King reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement. Lena went rigid, but she didn't run. He touched her shoulder, just briefly, and then withdrew his hand. "You're brave," he said. "Foolish, but brave. Your mother must be proud." "My mother is terrified." The words burst out of Era before she could stop them. She came down the last 3 stairs in a rush, putting herself at the Alpha King's side. "Alpha King, please. Lena made a mistake. She's a child. She doesn't understand the danger, but I do. I understand completely. Just please, don't punish her for being kind." He rose to his full height, and Ira had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. This close, she could see details she'd missed before. The thin white scar that cut through his left eyebrow. The lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of years spent squinting into the sun. The muscle that jumped in his jaw when he clenched his teeth. "You're asking me to ignore the law," he said. "I'm asking you to show mercy." "Mercy is a luxury we can't afford, not with rogues." "They're children." Era's voice cracked. "Look at them. Really look. The oldest is what, 10? 11? The youngest can't be more than 6. What threat do they pose to your pack? What danger?" "Today, none." The Alpha King glanced past her to where the 3 rogue pups huddled in the corner. In 5 years, when they're grown and their wolves are fully mature and they have no pack bond to control them, they'll be killers. That's what rogues become. Always. Then give them a pack bond. The idea came to Era fully formed, desperate and probably doomed. Take them into your pack, give them the structure they need. You're the Alpha King. If anyone has the power to do it, you do. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees, and Ira's wolf whimpered and pressed low in her chest, trying to make itself small. "You're suggesting I bond rogues into my pack," he said, each word precise and cold as ice cracking. "Rogues who could be spies, or sick, or mad. Rogues who could kill pack members in their sleep, or lead enemies to our door. You're suggesting I risk the safety of every wolf under my protection for 3 children you know nothing about. I'm suggesting you give them a chance." Era forced herself to hold his gaze, even though every instinct screamed at her to look away. "1 chance, that's all. If they prove dangerous, then do what you have to do. But at least give them the opportunity to prove they're not. And if they hurt someone while I'm giving them this chance, If they kill a pup, or attack an elder, or go mad and slaughter half a household before we can stop them, who takes responsibility for that? You? Yes. The word came out steady. Yes. I'll take responsibility. If they do anything wrong, anything at all, the consequences fall on me. The Alpha King stared at her. Era couldn't read his expression, couldn't tell if she'd just saved them or sealed their fate. Behind her, she heard Lena's sharp intake of breath. "Mama?" "No," Lena whispered. "Quiet, baby." Era didn't take her eyes off the Alpha King. "Do we have an agreement, Alpha King? I take responsibility for the rogue pups. If they cause any harm, you punish me instead of them." "That's not how pack justice works." "Then make an exception. You're the Alpha King. You can do whatever you want." His jaw tightened. "You have no idea what you're offering." "I know exactly what I'm offering." Era's hands were shaking again, so she clasped them behind her back where he couldn't see. "I'm offering my life in exchange for theirs. That's the deal. Take it or leave it." For a long moment, the only sound in the cellar was breathing. Era's, quick and shallow. Lena's, hitching with suppressed sobs. The rogue pups, nearly silent as they tried not to draw attention. And the Alpha Kings, slow and deep and utterly controlled. Then he turned away from her and walked to where the 3 rogue pups huddled against the wall. They shrank back as he approached, the oldest girl pulling the 2 boys tighter against her sides. She bared her teeth in a child's attempt at a threat display, and the Alpha King stopped just out of reach. "What are your names?" he asked. The girl's eyes darted to Era, then back to the Alpha King. She didn't answer. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "Not today. But I need your names." "Sasa." The girl's voice was barely audible. "I'm Sasa. This is Bren and Cole. They're my brothers." "How long have you been rogue, Sasa?" 2 months, maybe 3. "I don't know. It's hard to keep track." "What happened to your pack?" Sasa's face went blank. "They died, all of them. Sickness came in the winter and it killed everyone. We ran before it could kill us too." The Alpha King's expression didn't change, but something in the set of his shoulders shifted. He crouched down again, making himself smaller, less threatening. "Have you killed anyone?" he asked. "Any of you? Have you killed or seriously hurt anyone since you left your pack?" "No." Sasa shook her head hard. "No, we just ran. We've been running for weeks. We steal food sometimes, and we sleep wherever we can find shelter, but we don't hurt people. We're not bad. We're just trying to stay alive." "Your brothers, how old are they?" "Bren is 7. Cole just turned 6 last month." Sasa's voice broke. "Please don't kill them. Please, if you have to kill someone, kill me, but let them live. They're too little to die." Era's vision blurred. She blinked hard, trying to clear it, and realized she was crying. Silent tears that tracked down her cheeks and dripped off her jaw. Beside her, Lena had pressed both hands over her mouth, her eyes huge and wet. The Alpha King stood. He looked at the 3 rogue pups for another long moment, then turned and walked back to Era. "You'll take responsibility for them," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "You'll house them, feed them, clothe them. You'll teach them pack law and make sure they follow it. Any infraction, any sign of instability, you report it to me immediately. Do you understand?" Era's heart lurched. "I understand. If they hurt anyone, if they show any sign of going rogue, I will execute them. And then I will execute you for failing in your duty. There will be no trial, no appeal, no mercy. Do you understand that as well?" "I understand." He studied her face, and Era had the unsettling feeling he could see straight through her skin to the terror underneath. "Why are you doing this? These pups are nothing to you. You owe them nothing. Why risk your life and your daughter's future for 3 rogue children you met an hour ago?" Era thought about the bruises Thorns had left, the ones no one ever saw. She thought about the way pack members had looked through her after he died, like she'd stopped being a person and become a ghost. She thought about the 4 years she'd spent on the edge of pack territory, alone, except for Lena, surviving on the scraps no one else wanted. "Because no one helped me when I needed it," she said quietly. "And I don't want to be that person. The one who looks away when someone's suffering just because it's easier." The Alpha King's expression was unreadable. Then he nodded once, sharp and decisive. "You have 1 month," he said. 1 month to get them settled and prove they can function in a pack environment. I'll send someone to check on them weekly. If they pass inspection, we'll discuss making the arrangement permanent. And if they don't pass, then I'll do what should have been done this morning." He moved past her toward the stairs, then paused with one boot on the bottom step. "One more thing, you'll move." Era blinked. "Move? This cottage is too isolated, too far from the pack center. If you're responsible for 3 rogue pups, you need to be where I can reach you quickly if something goes wrong. I'll have housing arranged closer to the main lodge. You'll move within the week." "But this is my home. I've lived here for—" "Within the week, Ira Thorne's daughter. That's not a request." He climbed the stairs without looking back, his footsteps heavy on the wood. "Bring the pups up and feed them. They look half-starved. And get your daughter back to bed. She should be sleeping, not playing hero." Then he was gone, disappearing into the kitchen above. Era heard him speaking to his guards, his voice too low to make out words. Then the front door opened and closed, and the sound of wolves moving through snow gradually faded into silence. Era's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the cellar stairs, her whole body shaking with reaction. Lena was at her side in an instant, small arms wrapping around her neck. "Mama?" Lena sobbed into her shoulder. "Mama, you were so brave." "I was so stupid," Era corrected, but she held her daughter tight. So stupid. But he's letting them stay. The Alpha King is letting them stay. For now. Era pulled back enough to cup Lena's face in her hands. "Baby, listen to me. This is serious. Those pups are our responsibility now. If anything goes wrong, if they cause any trouble at all, the Alpha King will kill them. And then he'll kill me. Do you understand what that means?" Lena nodded, her face pale. "It means we have to take care of them. It means we have to keep them safe. It means we have to be very, very careful." Era looked past her daughter to where Sasa, Bren, and Cole still huddled against the wall. 3 pairs of eyes stared back at her, wide with shock and something that might have been hope. "Come here," she said gently. "Come upstairs. Let's get you warm and fed, and then we'll figure out what happens next." Sasa stood slowly, pulling her brothers up with her. They moved like ghosts, silent and wary, keeping close to the wall as they edged toward the stairs. When they reached Ira, Sasa stopped. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Why did you risk yourself for us?" Ira thought about lying, about giving some noble answer that would make her sound like a good person instead of a desperate one. But these children had been through enough. They deserved honesty. "Because my daughter asked me to," she said. "And because I know what it's like to be alone and scared with no one to help you. And because if I'd let the Alpha King kill you, I don't think I could have lived with myself after." Sasa nodded slowly. Then, so quietly Era almost missed it, she whispered, "Thank you." They went upstairs together, 5 people where there had been 2 just hours before. The kitchen was still cold despite the fire in the stove, and the morning sun painted everything in shades of gold and amber. Era moved through the familiar space in a daze, pulling out bowls and spoons, adding water to the oats she'd spilled earlier, stirring the pot while her mind raced. 1 month. The Alpha King had given her 1 month to turn 3 traumatized rogue pups into functioning pack members. 1 month to prove they weren't dangerous, weren't unstable, weren't going to murder someone in their sleep. 1 month to save all their lives. And they had to move. Leave this cottage that had been her sanctuary, her hiding place, the one spot in the world where she'd felt safe. Move closer to the pack center, closer to the Alpha King's lodge, closer to all the wolves who'd spent 4 years pretending she didn't exist. The porridge started to bubble. Ira stirred it mechanically, watching the oats thicken and soften. Behind her, she could hear Lena talking to the rogue pups in a low, soothing voice, telling them about the cottage, about the forest, about the red fox that sometimes came to steal scraps from the compost heap. Normal conversation. Like this was a normal morning, and not the day Era had gambled everything on 3 children she didn't know. She ladled porridge into bowls and carried them to the table. The rogue pups fell on the food like they were starving, which they probably were. Era watched them eat and tried to imagine what the next month would look like, teaching them pack law. That meant lessons, structure, rules they'd have to memorize and follow. It meant trips to the pack center so they could learn the hierarchy, understand the chain of command, see how a functional pack operated. It meant exposing them to dozens of wolves who would smell the rogue on them and react with suspicion at best, violence at worst. And it meant regular inspections from whoever the Alpha King sent. Someone would come to her home, watch the pups, test them, judge whether they were fit to live. One wrong move, one sign of instability, and it would all be over. Era's hands started shaking again. She set down the ladle before she could drop it and gripped the edge of the table instead. "Mama?" Lena's voice was small. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby." The lie tasted bitter. "Eat your breakfast. We have a lot to do today." Because they did. They had to prepare for the move, pack up their belongings, get the rogue pups cleaned up and properly clothed. They had to figure out sleeping arrangements and meal schedules and how to stretch their meager supplies to feed 5 mouths instead of 2. And somehow, in the middle of all that, Era had to figure out how to keep them all alive. She looked at the 4 children sitting at her table, eating porridge in the morning sunlight, and felt the weight of responsibility settle over her shoulders like a yoke. 1 month. She could do this for 1 month. She had to. The new cottage sat 300 yards from the Alpha King's main lodge, close enough that Era could see smoke rising from its chimneys when she stood at her kitchen window. The proximity made her skin crawl. 4 years she'd spent on the edge of pack territory, invisible and forgotten. Now she lived in the heart of everything, surrounded by wolves who watched her every move with suspicion and curiosity. The move had taken 3 days. Pack members had arrived with carts to transport her belongings, their faces carefully neutral as they loaded her sparse furniture and meager supplies. No one spoke to her directly. They addressed their questions to the air somewhere over her left shoulder, as if she were a ghost they could see through if they tried hard enough. The new cottage was larger than her old one, with 2 bedrooms upstairs instead of 1 and a cellar that didn't flood when the snow melted. Someone had stocked the pantry with supplies, enough food to last a month if she was careful. Ira had stood in the kitchen that first night, staring at sacks of flour and dried beans and salted meat, and felt her throat close with something she refused to name. Now, 5 days after the Alpha King had found the rogue pups in her cellar, Ira stood at the stove stirring stew and trying not to think about the inspection scheduled for this afternoon. The Alpha King's second, a wolf named Bjorn Eriksson, had come twice already. Both times he'd watched the pups with cold blue eyes, asked them questions about pack law, tested their control by deliberately provoking their wolves. Both times he'd left without saying whether they'd passed or failed. "Mama, Carl won't share the slate." Lena's voice carried from the main room where the 4 children sat at the table, working through the lessons Era had prepared. "He's had it for an hour, and Bren needs to practice his letters." "Cole, give your brother the slate." Era didn't turn from the stove. "You can practice your numbers on the sand tray." Shuffling sounds, a muffled protest, then Sasa's voice, firm and patient. "Come on, Cole. You know the rules. We take turns. It's Bren's turn now." The rules. Era had spent the last 5 days drilling rules into the rogue pups' heads until they could recite them in their sleep. Pack hierarchy, chain of command, proper behavior around dominance, how to show submission without showing fear, when to speak and when to stay silent, the 1,000 tiny social codes that kept a pack functioning. Sasa had absorbed everything like a sponge soaking up water. At 11 years old, she was sharp and observant, quick to learn, and quicker to correct her brothers when they made mistakes. Bren, 7 and thoughtful, studied the lessons with intense concentration, his small face serious as he traced letters on the slate. Cole was the challenge. 6 years old and still struggling with impulse control, prone to outbursts and tears when things didn't go his way. Normal behavior for a 6-year-old, Era thought. But rogues didn't get to be normal. They had to be perfect, or they died. She stirred the stew harder, watching chunks of meat and potato swirl through the broth. The meat had come from the stocked pantry, more protein than she'd seen in months. She'd almost cried when she found it, then felt sick with guilt for being grateful. The Alpha King had given her this food, this cottage, these resources. But the price was 3 children's lives balanced on a knife edge, and Era didn't know if she was strong enough to keep them from falling. A knock at the door made her jump. The spoon clattered against the pot's edge, splashing hot broth onto her hand. She bit back a curse and wiped her hand on her apron, then moved to answer the door. Bjorn Eriksson stood on her doorstep, massive and intimidating in his furs. Behind him stood another wolf, a woman Era didn't recognize. Tall and lean with dark blonde hair pulled into a severe braid. She wore leather armor and carried herself with the confidence of a warrior. Era Thorn's daughter. Bjorn's voice was flat, emotionless. This is Astrid Halvorsdottir, the pack's head trainer. We're here for the inspection. Of course. Era stepped back, gesturing them inside. Please, come in. The children are working on their lessons. Bjorn entered first, his bulk seeming to fill the entire kitchen. Astrid followed, her pale green eyes scanning the room with professional efficiency. Era watched her take in the neat space, the stocked pantry, the pot of stew simmering on the stove. Something flickered across the trainer's face, too quick to read. Children, Era called. Come here, please. We have visitors. 4 faces appeared in the doorway. Lena came first, her chin up and shoulders back, every inch the pack member she'd been raised to be. Sasa followed with Bren, and Cole pressed close to her sides, their expressions wary. Show respect, Ira said quietly. As one, the 3 rogue pups lowered their eyes and tilted their heads, exposing their throats in the submission gesture Ira had taught them. Bjorn watched without expression. Astrid's eyes narrowed slightly. Good, Bjorn said after a long moment. Sasa, come here. Sasa stepped forward, her movements careful and controlled. She stopped 3 feet from Bjorn and waited, her gaze fixed on the floor. Recite the pack hierarchy, Bjorn commanded. Alpha King Magnus Stormson rules the Northern Territories, Sasa began, her voice steady. Below him is the Alpha King's second, Bjorn Eriksson, who enforces the Alpha King's law and commands in his absence. Below the second are the council members, who advise the Alpha King and manage pack resources. Below the council are the warriors, who protect the pack from external threats. Below the warriors are the hunters and craftsmen, who provide for the pack's needs. Below them are the omegas and children, who support the pack structure. All wolves serve the pack. The pack is everything. And where do rogues fall in this hierarchy? Sasa's throat worked. Rogues have no place in the hierarchy. They exist outside pack structure and are considered a threat to pack stability. So what are you? The question hung in the air like a blade. Era's hands clenched in her apron, her nails digging into her palms through the fabric. I don't know, Sasa whispered. I'm not rogue anymore, but I'm not really pack either. I'm something in between. Wrong answer. Bjorn's voice cracked like a whip. There is no in between. You're either pack or you're not. Which is it? Sasa's shoulders hunched, tears welled in her eyes, and Ira saw her fighting not to let them fall. I want to be pack. But I don't know if pack wants me. Astrid made a small sound, quickly suppressed. Bjorn's expression remained carved from stone. That's for the Alpha King to decide, he said. Not you, understand? Yes, sir. Bren, you're next. The questioning continued for another 20 minutes. Bjorn tested each pup on pack law, social codes, proper behavior. He asked them about their control, their wolves, their understanding of pack bonds. Astrid watched in silence, her face unreadable. Finally, Bjorn turned to Era. Take them outside. I want to see them shift. Era's stomach dropped. They're very young. Cole only just learned to shift last year, and he's not always stable. I didn't ask for excuses. Take them outside. The yard behind the cottage was small, bordered by pine trees heavy with snow. Era led the children out into the cold, her breath misting in the air. Lena stayed close to her side, while the 3 rogue pups clustered together in the center of the yard. Shift, Bjorn commanded. All 3 of you, now. Sasa shifted first. The change rippled through her in a smooth wave, bones restructuring and fur sprouting, until a young wolf stood where the girl had been. Her coat was gray and silver, her eyes bright gold. She held herself perfectly still, waiting. Bren shifted next, his transformation slower but controlled. His wolf was smaller than Sasa's, darker gray with white markings on his chest. He moved to stand beside his sister, his tail low and ears back in submission. Cole struggled. Ira watched the little boy's face contort with effort, saw his body start to change, and then stutter, caught between forms. He whimpered, a sound of pain and frustration, and Sasa moved closer to him, pressing her wolf's body against his side. Focus, Cole, Era called softly. Don't force it, let it happen. Cole's eyes found hers, wide and frightened. Then he closed them, took a shuddering breath, and the shift completed. His wolf was small and gangly, still growing into his paws. His fur was lighter than his siblings, almost silver in the winter sunlight. Make them run, Bjorn said. I want to see their control at speed. Ira's chest tightened. The forest is dangerous. If they run too far, they won't. Sasa, take your brothers to the tree line and back. Stay together, go. The 3 wolf pups took off across the snow, their movements synchronized. Era watched them run, her heart in her throat. They moved well together, Sasa in the lead with Bren and Cole flanking her. When they reached the trees, Sasa circled and brought them back, their formation never breaking. They shifted back to human form in front of Bjorn, all 3 breathing hard from the exertion. Cole was shaking, whether from cold or exhaustion, Ira couldn't tell. Inside, she said, all of you, get warm. The children fled into the cottage. Ira started to follow, but Bjorn's voice stopped her. Stay. We need to talk. Ira turned slowly. Bjorn and Astrid stood side by side, their expressions grave. Dread pooled in her stomach like ice water. They're doing well, Astrid said. Her voice was surprisingly gentle, at odds with her warrior bearing. Better than I expected, honestly. Sasa shows real promise, strong control, good instincts. The boys are young, but they're learning. But, Era heard the word coming and braced for it. But Cole is unstable, Bjorn finished. His shift is inconsistent, his control is weak. He's a liability. He's 6 years old. The words came out sharper than Era intended. She forced her voice level. He's 6 years old, and he's been through trauma. Give him time, he'll improve. Time is a luxury we can't afford. If he loses control in the pack center, if he hurts someone, he won't. Era stepped forward, her hands fisted at her sides. I'm watching him constantly, teaching him, training him. He's getting better every day. Every day might not be fast enough. Bjorn's pale eyes bored into hers. The Alpha King gave you 1 month. You're almost a week in, and Cole still can't shift cleanly. What happens when the month is up and he still can't perform? Era's mouth went dry. He will. I'll make sure of it. How? Astrid asked. The trainer's gaze was sharp, assessing. What training methods are you using? I'm teaching them control exercises, breathing techniques, meditation. I'm having them practice shifting multiple times a day to build consistency. That's not enough. Astrid cut her off, not unkindly. Those techniques work for adult wolves with established control. For a traumatized 6-year-old rogue, you need something stronger. You need a pack bond to anchor him. He doesn't have a pack bond. That's the whole problem. No, but he has you. Astrid moved closer, her voice dropping. You're taking responsibility for these pups. You're feeding them, housing them, teaching them. In every way that matters, you're acting as their pack. But you're holding yourself apart, keeping distance. They can feel it, Era. They know you're afraid of them. The words hit like a physical blow. Era stepped back, shaking her head. I'm not afraid of them. I'm afraid for them. There's a difference. Is there? Astrid's green eyes were too knowing. Because from where I stand, you look like a woman who's terrified of getting attached to something she might lose. You're teaching them rules and laws and proper behavior, but you're not giving them what they actually need. Connection, belonging. The feeling that someone gives a damn whether they live or die. I do give a damn. Era's voice cracked. I risk my life for them. I gave up my home, my safety, everything. How is that not caring? Sacrifice isn't the same as love. Astrid's expression softened. And these children don't need a martyr. They need a pack. A real one. Not just someone going through the motions because the Alpha King ordered it. Era wanted to argue. Wanted to defend herself, to explain that she was doing everything she could, that she'd turned her entire life upside down for 3 children she barely knew. But the words stuck in her throat because Astrid was right. She was holding back, keeping distance, teaching the rogue pups to survive, but not letting them close enough to matter. Because if she let them matter, if she let herself care, then losing them would destroy her. And she'd already been destroyed once. She didn't have the strength to survive it again. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be what they need. Astrid studied her for a long moment. Then she glanced at Bjorn, some unspoken communication passing between them. Show us your wolf, Astrid said. Era blinked. What? Your wolf. Shift. Let us see. Why? This isn't about me. Everything is about you. Bjorn's voice was hard. You're the anchor these pups are supposed to bond to. If you're weak, they'll stay weak. If you're broken, they'll break too. So shift. Let us see what we're working with. Era's hands started to shake. She clasped them together, trying to hide it. My wolf is fine. There's no need. That wasn't a request. Bjorn's dominance pressed against her, heavy and suffocating. Shift. Now. The command hit her like a hammer. Era's wolf rose in response, but not with the smooth power of a healthy shift. It clawed its way up through her chest, desperate and frantic, fighting against something that shouldn't be there. Pain lanced through her body. Era gasped, doubling over as her bones started to break and reform. But the shift stuttered, caught, failed. Her wolf howled inside her mind, trapped and raging, unable to break free. She fell to her knees in the snow, her whole body shaking with the effort of a shift that wouldn't complete. Sweat poured down her face despite the cold. Her vision grayed at the edges. Stop! Astrid's voice cut through the haze. Stop trying. Let it go. Era released the shift, and her wolf retreated with a whimper of pain. She knelt in the snow, gasping for breath, her body aching like she'd been beaten. Footsteps crunched through the snow. Astrid crouched in front of her, the trainer's face grave. "How long?" Astrid asked quietly. 4 years. The admission tasted like ash. "Since my mate died." "You can't shift at all?" "Sometimes, if I'm desperate enough, if there's enough adrenaline, but it hurts, it always hurts, and I can't hold the form for long before I collapse." Astrid swore, low and vicious. She stood and turned to Bjorn. "Did you know about this?" No one knew. Bjorn's expression had gone carefully blank. She's been living on the edge of pack territory for 4 years. No one paid attention to whether she could shift or not. The Alpha King needs to know. No. Ira forced herself to her feet, her legs trembling. "Please, if he finds out I'm broken, he'll take the pups away. He'll say I can't anchor them properly and he'll kill them. Please don't tell him." Astrid's jaw tightened. "This isn't something we can hide. You're trying to bond 3 rogue pups to a wolf who can barely shift. That's not just dangerous, it's impossible. They need a strong anchor, and you can't provide it." "I can learn. I can fix this. Just give me time." "There is no fixing this." Astrid's voice was gentle, but firm. "Whatever broke in you when your mate died, it's not something you can will away. You need help, real help. A healer, maybe a shaman. Someone who understands wolf bonds and how to repair them." "I don't have money for a healer." Era's voice came out flat, defeated. "I don't have money for anything. I've been surviving on scraps for 4 years. I can't afford to fix myself even if I wanted to. The pack would provide. The pack hasn't provided anything for me in 4 years. Why would they start now?" The words hung in the cold air. Astrid and Bjorn exchanged another look, longer this time. "Because the Alpha King commanded it," Bjorn said finally. "And what the Alpha King commands, the pack obeys. The Alpha King doesn't care about me, he cares about the rogue pups and whether they're a threat. I'm just the convenient solution to his problem." "You're wrong." The new voice made Era spin around. Magnus Stormson stood at the corner of the cottage, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the snow. How long he'd been there, how much he'd heard, Era had no idea. But the expression on his face made her stomach drop. "Alpha King." She tried to bow, but her legs were still shaking, and she nearly fell. "I didn't hear you approach. Clearly." He moved toward her with that predator's grace, each step deliberate and controlled. "Inside, all of you, we're going to have a conversation." The kitchen felt too small with Magnus in it. He stood with his back to the stove, arms crossed over his chest, his pale blue eyes moving between Ira, Bjorn, and Astrid. The 4 children had been sent upstairs, Lena protesting until Ira gave her a look that brooked no argument. "You can't shift," Magnus said. "Not a question. A statement." Ira lifted her chin. "I can shift. It's just difficult. Don't lie to me. I watched you try. I saw what happened." His voice was dangerously soft. "How long have you been broken?" "I'm not broken, I'm just—" "How long, Era?" She flinched at the use of her name. 4 years, since Thorns died. "And you didn't think this was relevant information when you volunteered to take responsibility for 3 rogue pups?" "I thought I could manage. I thought if I just worked hard enough, if I just tried hard enough." "You thought wrong." Magnus pushed off from the stove, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've taken on the responsibility of anchoring 3 traumatized rogue children when you can barely hold your own wolf together. You've put them in more danger than they were in when I found them in your cellar." "That's not true." Era's hands clenched into fists. "I've been teaching them, training them. They're doing well. You saw them today. They're learning. They're mimicking, following rules because they're terrified of what happens if they don't. But they're not bonding. They're not stabilizing. Because the anchor they're trying to attach to is broken, and they can feel it." Magnus's voice rose, the first real anger she'd heard from him. "You should have told me. The moment I gave you this responsibility, you should have told me you weren't capable of fulfilling it." "I am capable." The words came out fierce, desperate. I've kept them safe, I've kept them fed and warm and taught them everything they need to know. I've done everything you asked. Except the one thing that actually matters. You can't give them a pack bond, you can't anchor them. And without that, everything else is just theater. They'll never be stable. They'll always be rogue, no matter how many rules they memorize or how well they perform in inspections. The truth of it hit Era like a fist to the chest. She staggered back a step, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. So what happens now? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. You execute them? Execute me? We had a deal, Alpha King. 1 month. You gave me 1 month. The deal was based on the assumption that you were a functional wolf, capable of providing what these pups needed. You're not. The deal is void. No. The word exploded out of her. No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to give me hope and then rip it away because I'm not perfect enough. Those children upstairs have been through hell. They've lost everything. And they're finally starting to feel safe. Finally starting to believe they might actually survive. You can't take that from them. You can't. I can do whatever is necessary to protect my pack. They are your pack. Era stepped forward, closing the distance between them until she had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. You took them in. You gave them a chance. That makes them pack, whether you want to admit it or not. And if you kill them now, you're not protecting anyone. You're just proving that mercy is weakness and kindness is a trap. Is that really the lesson you want to teach? Magnus stared down at her, his expression unreadable. The muscle in his jaw jumped, the only sign of the tension coiled in his massive frame. You don't understand the risk, he said finally, his voice low and dangerous. Unstable rogues don't just hurt themselves, they hurt everyone around them. I've seen it happen. I've seen rogues go mad and slaughter entire families before anyone could stop them. I've seen the aftermath, the blood and the bodies and the children who died because someone thought they could save a rogue with good intentions and hope. I will not let that happen to my pack. Not for you. Not for anyone. Then help me. The words came out raw, stripped of pride. Help me fix what's broken so I can be the anchor they need. You're the Alpha King. You have resources, healers, power. Help me, and I swear I'll do whatever it takes to keep them safe. Why should I? Magnus leaned down, bringing his face level with hers. Why should I invest time and resources in a widow who's been barely surviving on the edge of pack territory for 4 years? What makes you worth saving? Era's breath caught. The question cut deeper than any blade, exposing the wound she'd been trying to ignore since the day Thorns died. What made her worth saving? Nothing. She was nobody. A broken wolf with a dead mate and a daughter to raise and nothing else to offer. But the children upstairs weren't nobody. They were 3 lives that deserved a chance. I'm not worth saving, she said quietly. But they are. And if helping me is what it takes to save them, then that should be enough. Magnus studied her face for a long moment. Then he straightened, putting distance between them, and turned to Astrid. Can she be fixed? Astrid hesitated. I don't know. Whatever broke when her mate died, it's deep. It might be permanent. That's not what I asked. Can she be fixed, yes or no? Maybe, if we can find the right healer. If she's willing to do the work. If her wolf hasn't given up completely. Astrid's gaze flicked to Era. It won't be easy. This kind of damage takes time to heal, and time is something we don't have much of. Then we work fast. Magnus's voice had gone cold and decisive, the voice of an Alpha King making a ruling. Bjorn, send for Ragna the Wise. Tell her I need her at the lodge immediately, and I don't care what she's doing or how far she has to travel. She gets here within 3 days or I'll drag her here myself. Bjorn nodded and left without a word. Magnus turned back to Ira. You'll move again, he said. Not to a different cottage. To the lodge, you and the children. I want you close enough that I can, Part 4, monitor you. If anything goes wrong, if the pups show signs of instability, I'm right there. No arguments. No negotiations. This is the condition. Era's mind reeled. Move into the Alpha King's lodge, live under the same roof as the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories. That's not necessary. We can manage in the cottage. You've been managing for 4 years, and look where it got you. Magnus's tone left no room for debate. The lodge has space, more than enough for you and 4 children. You'll have your own wing, privacy when you need it. But you'll be close enough that I can ensure the rogue pups don't become a threat, and close enough that Ragna can work with you daily once she arrives. Daily? Era's stomach twisted. What kind of healing are we talking about? The kind that hurts. Astrid's voice was sympathetic but honest. If Ragna agrees to take your case, she'll have to dig deep into whatever trauma broke your wolf. That means reliving it, facing it, working through it. It's not going to be pleasant. I don't care about pleasant. Era straightened her shoulders, pushing past the fear coiling in her chest. I care about keeping those children alive. If I have to relive every nightmare I've ever had to do that, then that's what I'll do. Magnus's expression shifted, something that might have been respect flickering across his face. Pack your things. I'll send wolves to help transport you this afternoon. Bring everything you need. You won't be coming back to this cottage. He left without waiting for a response, his presence disappearing like a storm passing over. Astrid lingered, her green eyes studying Era with an intensity that made her want to squirm. You love them, Astrid said quietly. The rogue pups. You've been trying not to, trying to keep distance, but you love them anyway. Era's throat tightened. It doesn't matter what I feel. What matters is keeping them safe. It matters more than you think. Astrid moved to the door, then paused. The Alpha King is hard, but he's fair. If he's investing this much in saving you and those pups, it's because he sees something worth saving. Don't make him regret it. Then she was gone too, leaving Era alone in the kitchen with the smell of stew and the weight of impossible choices. The Alpha King's lodge was built from massive timber logs, each one thick as a man's torso, fitted together with such precision that no wind could penetrate the seams. 3 stories tall with a great hall at its center, it dominated the pack center like a mountain rising from the forest floor. Era had never been inside. In 4 years of living on pack territory, she'd never had reason to approach the seat of pack power. Now she stood in the entrance hall, her few belongings already carried upstairs by silent pack members, and tried not to feel like she was walking into a trap. This way. A young woman with auburn hair and kind eyes gestured toward a wide staircase. I'm Freya, the lodge keeper. The Alpha King asked me to show you to your rooms. Era followed, acutely aware of Lena's hand gripping hers, and the 3 rogue pups pressed close behind them. They climbed to the 2nd floor, then down a long corridor lined with doors. Freya stopped at the end, pushing open a heavy wooden door to reveal a suite of rooms that stole Era's breath. The main room was larger than her entire cottage had been, with a stone fireplace already crackling with warmth, thick rugs covering the wooden floor, and furniture that looked hand-carved by master craftsmen. Doors led off to smaller bedrooms, 4 of them, each with a real bed and clean linens. The Alpha King's quarters are on the 3rd floor, Freya said, her tone carefully neutral. The kitchens are on the ground floor, accessible anytime you need them. Meals are served in the Great Hall 3 times daily, but if the children prefer to eat privately, I can arrange for food to be brought up. This is too much. Era's voice came out strained. We don't need all this space. The Alpha King insists. Freya's expression softened. He wants the children to be comfortable, to feel safe. This wing is yours for as long as you need it. After Freya left, Era stood in the center of the main room and tried to process the sudden shift in her reality. 5 days ago, she'd been living in a tiny cottage on the edge of pack territory, invisible and forgotten. Now she stood in the Alpha King's lodge, surrounded by luxury she'd never expected to see again, responsible for 3 rogue pups and her own broken wolf. Mama, can Sasa and the boys share a room? Lena's voice pulled her back to the present. I think they'd feel safer together. Era looked at her daughter, this fierce 12-year-old who'd adapted to every impossible situation life threw at them, and felt her heart squeeze. That's thoughtful of you. Yes, they can share. Pick whichever room you want for yourself. The children scattered to explore, their voices echoing through the suite. Era moved to the window and looked out over the pack center. From here, she could see wolves moving through the streets, going about their daily business. Smoke rose from a dozen chimneys. Children played in the snow, their laughter carrying on the cold air. Pack life. Community. The thing she'd been shut out of for 4 years. A knock at the door made her turn. She opened it to find Magnus standing in the corridor, his massive frame somehow even more imposing in the confines of the lodge. "Are the rooms acceptable?" he asked. "They're more than acceptable. They're excessive. They're necessary." He stepped inside without invitation, his gaze sweeping the space. The children need stability, comfort, a sense that they're not just being warehoused until I decide their fate. Is that what you're doing? Deciding their fate? I'm trying to give them a chance at having a fate beyond execution. Magnus moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames. Ragna will arrive in 2 days. She's the best healer in the Northern Territories, maybe in all the territories. If anyone can repair what's broken in your wolf, it's her. And if she can't, then we'll find another solution. He turned to face her, his pale blue eyes intense. I don't give up easily, Era. When I commit to something, I see it through. I've committed to giving those pups a chance. That means I've committed to fixing you, whether you believe you're worth fixing or not. The words settled into her chest, heavy and warm. Why? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why invest so much in someone who's been nothing but a burden to this pack? Magnus was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and rough. Because 4 years ago, when your mate died, the pack failed you. They should have supported you, helped you through your grief, ensured you had what you needed to survive and heal. Instead, they forgot about you, left you to suffer alone on the edge of territory with a child to raise and no resources. That's not how pack works. That's not how I want my pack to work. You weren't Alpha King 4 years ago. No, my father was. And he was a hard man who believed wolves should be self-sufficient, that asking for help was weakness. He let pack members fall through the cracks all the time, and no one questioned it because that was just how things were. Magnus's jaw tightened. I've been Alpha King for 2 years now. I'm trying to build something different. A pack that actually takes care of its members, that doesn't abandon wolves when they're at their lowest. But I can't undo 4 years of neglect overnight. All I can do is try to make it right now. Ira stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not just the Alpha King, the powerful dominant who held life and death in his hands, but a man trying to fix a broken system, trying to be better than what came before. The rogue pups, she said slowly. You could have killed them the moment you found them. No one would have questioned it. But you didn't. No, I didn't. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the warm room. Because I'm tired of killing. Tired of making the hard choice because it's easier than trying to save something. Those pups didn't choose to be rogue. They didn't choose to lose their pack, to be traumatized and abandoned. They're victims, not criminals. And victims deserve a chance at redemption. Even if it's risky, even if they might hurt someone. Even then. His voice was firm, certain. We manage the risk. We train them, guide them, give them the structure and support they need to become stable. But we don't kill them just because they might be dangerous. That's not justice. That's just fear. Ira felt something crack open in her chest, some wall she'd been holding in place for 4 years. I was afraid, she whispered. When Thorns died, I was so afraid. Afraid of being alone, afraid of failing Lena, afraid of my own wolf because it hurt so much to shift. And the pack just disappeared. No one came to check on me. No one offered help. I was invisible. And after a while, I started to believe that's what I deserved. To be invisible. To be forgotten. You deserved better. Magnus's hand lifted, hovering near her shoulder, then dropped back to his side. You deserved a pack that held you up when you couldn't stand on your own. I can't give you back those 4 years, but I can give you this. A chance to heal. A chance to be part of something again. Will you take it? Era looked up at him, this massive wolf who'd turned her world upside down in less than a week, and felt the fear that had been her constant companion start to loosen its grip. Yes, she said. I'll take it. 2 days later, Ragnar the Wise arrived at the lodge like a winter storm given human form. She was ancient, her face lined with decades of life, her hair white as fresh snow and hanging in a thick braid down her back. But her eyes were sharp and bright, missing nothing as she studied Era in the Great Hall. So you're the broken wolf the Alpha King wants me to fix. Ragnar's voice was surprisingly strong for someone so old. Show me. Show you what? Your wolf. Let me see what I'm working with. Era's hands clenched. I can't shift easily. It hurts. I know it hurts. That's why I'm here. Now shift, girl. I don't have time for cowardice. The command in Ragnar's voice was different from Magnus's dominance, but no less powerful. Era felt her wolf stir, reluctant and afraid. She closed her eyes, reached for the shift, and felt the familiar pain lance through her body. Her bones started to break and reform, but the shift stuttered, caught. Her wolf clawed at the barrier, desperate to break free but unable to push through. Sweat poured down Era's face. Her vision grayed. Enough! Ragnar's hand pressed against Era's chest, right over her heart. Let it go. Breathe. Era released the shift and collapsed to her knees, gasping. Ragnar crouched in front of her, those sharp eyes studying her with unnerving intensity. Your wolf isn't broken, Ragnar said. It's grieving. There's a difference. What? When your mate died, your wolf tried to follow. Tried to die too, because that's what wolves do when they lose their mate. But you wouldn't let it. You held on because you had a daughter who needed you. So your wolf is trapped, caught between living and dying, unable to fully commit to either. Ragnar sat back on her heels. That's why shifting hurts. Your wolf is trying to complete the death it started 4 years ago, and your human half keeps dragging it back. You're at war with yourself. The words hit Era like physical blows. How do I stop it? How do I make my wolf want to live again? You give it a reason. Ragnar glanced toward the doorway where Magnus stood watching, his expression grave. A purpose. A bond. Something worth living for beyond just survival. I have Lena. I have the rogue Pups now. Isn't that enough? It should be. But your wolf doesn't recognize them as pack. It sees them as obligations, responsibilities, burdens to carry. Not bonds. Not connections that feed the soul. Ragnar stood, her joints creaking. We're going to change that. Starting tomorrow, you and I will work together every day. I'm going to teach you how to rebuild your wolf from the inside out. It will hurt worse than anything you've felt so far. But if you survive it, you'll come out whole on the other side. And if I don't survive it, Ragnar's smile was grim. Then at least you'll finally get the death your wolf has been craving for 4 years. Either way, the war ends. The healing began the next morning in a small room on the 3rd floor that Ragnar had claimed as her workspace. Era sat on the floor across from the old healer, her hands resting on her knees, her heart hammering against her ribs. Close your eyes, Ragnar commanded. Find your wolf. Don't try to shift. Just find it in your mind and hold it there. Era obeyed. She reached inward, past the pain and fear, until she found her wolf curled in the darkness of her mind. It looked up at her with eyes full of sorrow, and Ira felt tears slip down her cheeks. Good. Now ask it what it needs. I don't understand. Your wolf is a part of you, but it's also separate. It has needs, desires, wants. You've been ignoring those for 4 years, forcing it to bend to your will. Stop forcing. Start listening. Ask it what it needs. Era focused on her wolf, on the aching emptiness that radiated from it. What do you need? She asked silently. The answer came not in words, but in images. A pack, connection, belonging. The feeling of running with others, of being part of something larger than herself. Her wolf didn't want to die. It wanted to live. But it couldn't live in isolation. Wolves were pack animals. Without pack, they withered. It needs a pack, Era whispered. It's been alone too long. Then give it one. Ragnar's voice was gentle now. The rogue pups, your daughter, the Alpha King. Stop holding them at arm's length. Let them in. Let them become pack, not just obligations. Can you do that? I don't know how. Yes, you do. You've just forgotten. We're going to help you remember. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of pain and progress. Ragnar worked with Era every morning, guiding her through exercises that forced her to confront her grief, her fear, her bone-deep loneliness. They talked about Thorns, about the day he died, about the way Era's world had shattered and never quite reformed. In the afternoons, Era worked with the rogue pups. But now, instead of drilling them on rules and laws, she focused on connection. She ate meals with them, listened to their stories, learned about the pack they'd lost, and the trauma they'd survived. Slowly, carefully, she let them matter. Sasa was the first to break through. 10 days after moving into the lodge, the girl had a nightmare that left her screaming in terror. Era rushed to her room and gathered her close, holding her while she sobbed. And for the first time in 4 years, Era felt her wolf stir not with pain, but with purpose. This child needed her. This child was hers to protect. The bond formed slowly, a thread of connection that grew stronger each day. Bren was next, then Cole. Each child found their way past Era's walls, each one adding another thread to the bond that was slowly becoming pack. Magnus watched from a distance, his presence a constant in the lodge. He checked on them daily, asked about their progress, ensured they had everything they needed. And gradually, Era realized she was watching for him too. Looking for his massive form in the corridors, listening for his deep voice, feeling safer when he was near. 3 weeks after Ragnar's arrival, Era shifted for the first time without pain. It happened in the training yard behind the lodge, with Ragnar and Magnus watching. Era reached for her wolf, and instead of resistance, she felt eagerness. Her wolf surged forward, and the shift flowed through her like water, smooth and natural. She stood on 4 legs in the snow, her wolf form solid and real, and threw her head back in a howl of pure joy. The sound echoed across the pack center, and other wolves answered, their voices joining hers in a chorus that made her heart soar. When she shifted back, Magnus was there, wrapping a fur around her shoulders. His hands lingered steady and warm, and Ira looked up to find him watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. "You did it," he said quietly. "You're whole again." "Not whole yet." Era's voice was rough from the howl. "But getting there, thanks to you. Thanks to your own strength, I just provided the resources. You did the work." They stood close in the cold air, snow falling gently around them, and Ira felt something shift between them. Something that went beyond Alpha King and pack member, beyond protector and protected. Something that felt dangerously like the beginning of a bond. That night, the 5 of them sat together in the main room of their suite. Lena was teaching Cole a card game, while Sasa and Bren worked on a puzzle by the fire. Ira watched them, her heart full in a way it hadn't been since Thorns died. A knock at the door interrupted the peaceful scene. Era opened it to find Magnus standing there, his expression serious. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Privately?" Era stepped into the corridor, pulling the door closed behind her. "Is something wrong?" "No, something's right, actually. I wanted to tell you that the council met today. They've agreed to accept the rogue pups as provisional pack members. They'll need to continue training, continue proving their stability, but they're no longer under threat of execution. They're safe." The words took a moment to sink in. When they did, Era's knees went weak. "They're safe. Truly?" "Truly. You kept your end of the bargain. You stabilized them, bonded them, gave them what they needed to become pack. The threat is over." Era pressed her hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. Thank you for giving us the chance. Thank you for proving it was worth taking." Magnus hesitated, then added, "There's something else. The council also discussed your status. They want to formally reinstate you as a full pack member. No more living on the edges, no more being forgotten. You'd have all the rights and protections of pack, including a vote in pack decisions and access to pack resources." "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." His voice dropped lower. "Say you'll stay. Not just for the pups, but for yourself. Say you'll be pack again." Ira looked up at him, this Alpha King who'd saved her in ways she was only beginning to understand, and felt her wolf rise in recognition. Not the mate bond, not yet. But something close. Something that could become that, given time. "Yes," she said. "I'll stay. I'll be pack." Magnus smiled, and the expression transformed his face from intimidating to breathtaking. "Good. Because I'm not done with you yet, Ira Thorne's daughter. We've only just begun." What did you think of the moment when Era's wolf finally shifted without pain after 3 weeks of healing work with Ragna? Have you ever experienced a breakthrough after a long period of struggle? That moment when something that felt impossible suddenly becomes possible? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of second chances and found family, please subscribe and join our pack for more Nordic wolf shifter romances. This story explored themes of healing from grief, the power of chosen family, and finding the courage to let others in after loss. Remember that wholeness isn't about never being broken. It's about having the strength to pick up the pieces and build something new.